Okay, so you've probably been hearing all this buzz about AI, right? I mean, it seems like every single day there's some new crazy breakthrough. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't think about. It takes a ton of power, I mean, computational power,
Yeah.
to actually make all that happen.
Yeah, for sure. And today we're going to dive deep into a move that Meta is making. The Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all that. Well, they're trying to design their own chips. And these chips are going to be used to train AI models.
Wow, their own chips, huh? That's pretty wild.
It is. And we got some really interesting details reported by Reuters that we're going to break down.
Okay, cool. So what's the mission for this deep dive then?
Well, we're going to try to understand why a giant company like Meta would try to take on something so difficult, designing chips. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not easy.
No, it's not. So why are they doing it?
Well, we're going to look at the potential impact and see if we can figure out how this fits into the larger AI world.
Right, because, everybody's using AI now, but they don't even think about what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we're going to try to make it really clear for you just how these powerful forces are shaping all the technology you use every day.
I love it. Okay, so, when we talk about AI, there's usually two big parts, right?
Yeah.
You've got the training part where you're basically teaching the AI with just mountains and mountains of data.
Right.
It's like showing a little kid like a million pictures of cats and saying, okay, this is a cat, this is a cat, this is a cat.
Exactly. Got to learn somehow.
Exactly. And then you got the inference part. And that's after the AI is actually learned. Then it can actually start doing things like, making predictions or generating content or whatever.
Right. So keep those two parts in mind as we go through all this stuff about what Meta is doing.
Okay, so let's get down to it. Why would Meta even try to do this? It seems incredibly hard.
Oh, it's incredibly hard. But for a company as big as Meta, it really comes down to money. They think their expenses for 2025 are going to be somewhere between like 114 and 119 billion dollars.
Whoa, billion with a B.
Billion with a B, and a huge chunk of that, maybe even $65 billion, will be spent on building and running their AI stuff.
Makes sense. They have
Yeah.
billions of users,
Oh,
right, on all their platforms.
Yeah, they do. And they're using AI for everything, from deciding what you see in your feed to powering all these new AI tools.
Right, right, right.
All that needs a crazy amount of computer power. And we're not talking about just saving a few bucks here. Meta is trying to totally change how much this costs so they can do completely new things with AI, things they couldn't even dream of before.
Okay, so we're talking really big picture stuff here. This isn't just about, being a little bit more efficient. This is about changing the entire game.
Exactly.
Okay, so it makes total sense that they would try to find ways to control those costs, right? And, if you're spending, tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah, and that's the main idea behind them trying to make their own chips.
Okay, so tell me about that. How do they think making their own chips will actually save them money?
So right now, they're using chips from other companies, mainly Nvidia. Their GPUs, those are like the gold standard for AI right now, but they are really expensive.
So Meta's thinking if they can cut out the middleman and just make their own chips,
Yeah, then they can save a ton of money in the long run.
makes sense. They're trying to control a huge part of their business, and they're trying to make all their AI projects actually affordable because it sounds like it's costing them a fortune.
It is?
All right, so we've talked about the costs. What about this new training chip that they're trying out? I think I read that it's called MTIA.
Yeah, MTIA. And they're putting it through all the tests right now. It's a really important step for them. And this chip is specifically made for training AI systems. It's their very first one.
So it's specifically made for training. So that means it's different from other chips out there.
Yeah, this chip is what they call a dedicated accelerator. So unlike those GPUs from Nvidia that we talked about, those can do a bunch of different things. But this MTIA chip, it's only made for training AI. It's super focused.
Okay, so let me try to get this straight. So why is it better to have a chip that just does one thing really well? Like, why not just use more of those GPUs that can do a bunch of different things?
Well, the main reason is that this dedicated chip saves energy. It's designed to do all the math needed for AI training in the most efficient way possible. So that means less wasted energy, right?
Makes sense. Less wasted energy means less money spent on electricity.
Exactly. And with as much power as Meta uses for their AI, even a little bit of savings can make a huge difference, not just for their budget, but also for the environment.
That's true. Being more energy efficient is always a good thing. So are they making this chip themselves or?
They partnered with this company called TSMC. They're like the giants of chip making. They're based in Taiwan.
Oh, yeah, TSMC. I think I've heard of them. Okay,
Oh.
cool. So now you're making me think about my own phone and all the chips in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of chips in everything these days.
So I read this term tape out, and I have no idea what that means.
Okay, so tape out. That's when they have the final design for the chip ready to go. And it's a really important step because they're taking this super complex digital design and sending it to be made into a physical chip.
So like they're sending the blueprints to the factory, but it's all digital.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like the point of no return. It costs a ton of money. So once they send that design, if there's any mistake, they might have to start all over.
Oh, wow. So this tape out thing is a really big deal. How much does it cost?
Much so, tens of millions of dollars for a typical tape out.
Yeah.
And it takes forever to actually get the chips back from the factory. It could be like 3 to 6 months or even longer.
Wow. So they spend all this money, they send out the design, and then they just have to wait and hope that everything works.
Pretty much. And there's no guarantee that it'll work. Sometimes the first batch of chips they get back, they have problems. Like maybe there's a design flaw or something went wrong during the manufacturing.
So then they have to start all over again.
Sometimes, yeah, they got to figure out what went wrong, fix the design, and do another tape out.
Oh man, so this whole chip making thing is super risky.
Very risky, but potentially super rewarding.
Okay, so this isn't Meta's first time trying to make their own chips. Right. Didn't they try this before?
Yeah, they've tried this before. Remember, MTIA stands for Meta Training and Inference Accelerator?
Oh, right.
And the program has had kind of a rough start. I mean, they had to scrap an entire chip design before.
Really? So they've had some failures.
They have, yeah.
But haven't they also had some wins?
They have. So they're actually already using an MTIA chip, but it's a different one. This one's for inference, and it's actually being used right now in their recommendation systems.
Right.
So it's helping to choose what you see on your Facebook and Instagram feed.
Oh, wow. So they're already using some of their own chips.
Mhm.
So that must give them some confidence for this new training chip, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. They're learning as they go. And the executives at Meta have said that they want to start using these training chips by 2026. And just like with the inference chip, they're going to start with the recommendation systems. But the big goal is to use these chips for even more powerful AI stuff. Like, for example, their chatbot, Meta AI. One of Meta's top people, Chris Cox, he called their chip development a walk, crawl, run situation.
Walk, crawl, run. I like that analogy.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
So he said that the first inference chip for recommendations, that was a big win. That was the crawl phase. And now they're moving to walk with these new training chips.
That makes a lot of sense. So, we've mentioned Nvidia a bunch of times.
Yeah.
They're obviously the big player when it comes to chips. So where does Meta fit in with all of this? I mean, are they trying to compete directly with Nvidia?
That's the million-dollar question. So just like a lot of other tech companies, Meta has been relying on NVIDIA's GPUs. They've spent a lot of money on them to train their AI models. Like, remember the Llama models we talked about before? Those were trained using NVIDIA GPUs.
Right.
But there's been a lot of talk lately about whether just making AI models bigger and bigger is really the best way to go. For a while, people thought that if you just kept making models bigger and gave them more data, they would just keep getting better. But now some people are starting to question that.
Yeah, I've seen some of that debate online. What's making people doubt that bigger is always better?
Well, there's this Chinese company called DeepSeek, and they've come out with these AI models that are actually pretty good, and they're also really cheap.
Okay, how do they do that?
They're focusing on making the AI run efficiently after it's been trained. That's that inference part we were talking about. So they're not just trying to make the biggest models possible. They're trying to make models that are actually practical to use. And it seems like it's working. Their models are good enough, and they don't need the most expensive, most powerful chips to run them. And this actually caused some problems for Nvidia. Their stock price went up and down for a while because of this. It's mostly recovered now. But it shows that things might be changing. People are starting to look for different ways to do AI, not just bigger and bigger models.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we all have these little computers in our pockets, and AI is running on them all the time. So it's not always about having the most powerful computer in the world.
Exactly, and that's where Meta comes in. They're making this big bet that designing their own chips will let them do AI in a way that's better for them.
Yeah, instead of just relying on Nvidia. So they're kind of shaking things up.
Yeah, for sure. So you've got Meta going their own way with chip design. And at the same time, you've got this big debate about whether the way we've been doing AI is actually the best way. It's a really interesting time.
It is. It really feels like we're at a turning point. So what does all this mean for us, the people actually using these apps and websites? Will we see any difference?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. If these chips that Meta's making actually work well and they're more efficient, it could mean we'll see new AI features much faster. Maybe existing features will get better too. They might be able to give you better recommendations in your feeds. Maybe the AI tools will be faster and more responsive.
Okay, so it could actually make a noticeable difference in how these apps work.
Yeah, and I think it's important to see this as part of a bigger arms race. I mean, all the big tech companies are trying to get ahead in AI, and they want to be able to control their own technology.
Oh, wow. Arms race. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, it's competitive out there.
All right, so let's do a quick recap. Meta is really serious about making their own AI training chips, and the biggest reason is money. They're spending a ridiculous amount on AI infrastructure, and they want to cut those costs way down.
Exactly. And they're also trying to control their own future. They don't want to rely on other companies for something as important as AI.
Right, right. And this is super risky. We've established that.
Oh, yeah, super risky. But it shows how important AI is becoming. I mean, this isn't just Meta. All the big tech companies are trying to figure out the best way to do AI, both the software part and the hardware part.
Right, so it's not just about the code, it's about the actual physical chips too.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what happens if other companies start making their own chips too? What will that mean for companies like Nvidia? Will they still be the top dog?
Yeah, and what will it mean for how quickly AI develops? Will we see even more crazy advancements if everyone's making their own specialized chips?
Yeah, those are all really important questions. For a long time, we've been using these general purpose chips for AI, but maybe the future is all about specialized hardware.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about. And it's clear that this hardware is just as important as the AI software itself. I mean, it's what makes it all possible.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see Meta making such a big move, and I think we should all be paying attention to what happens next. The whole AI landscape is changing really quickly.
Definitely. Well, thanks for breaking all that down. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what's going on.
Of course, glad we could do this deep dive.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, keep those questions in mind. What happens if everyone starts making their own AI chips? What will that mean for the future of AI? Something to think about.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
All right. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.